So, you have finally decided to ask yourself the big question. Should you start a D&D game? Well, guess what? In this video, we're going to talk all through it, and by the end of it, you're going to know exactly whether or not it's time for you to start D&D. Let's dive right into it. Good morning, welcome back to the channel. I'm the GM Philosopher. Should you start a D&D game? If you are thinking about launching into TTRPGs, which stands for Tabletop Role-Playing Games, then Dungeons & Dragons has likely crossed your radar. It is by far one of the most mainstream TTRPGs, if not the most mainstream TTRPG, and it packs a big punch of fun and awesomeness for people who want to get into TTRPGs. But here's a question: should you start a D&D game? Or is it just too much right now? Obviously, it's a little bit of a money commitment to buy the materials. And so you may be thinking to yourself, you know what? Should I even invest that money in it? Is it worth it? Am I ready right now to even jump into that kind of thing? Or should I just stick to the hobbies I'm used to and not dive into a new one right now? Well, hey, these are great questions, and you may not know the answer because if you've never played D&D, or if you've only played a little bit, you may be wondering exactly how to make this choice. And so today we're going to talk all about it. And we're going to start by going over a list of the pros and cons associated with starting a D&D game. Now, I'm going to run through these relatively quickly because these are relatively simple. You just need to know that there are pros and cons to it. So let's start with the pros. Number one, creative expression, storytelling, craft and narrate engaging stories filled with adventure. There's world building. You get to create your own fantasy worlds, cultures, and histories. There is character development. Players can design unique characters with rich backstories. If these ideas appeal to you, then D&D is probably a great idea for you. There's also the social interaction aspect of it, right? There's community building, strengthen friendships and meet new people. There's teamwork. It encourages collaboration and cooperative problem solving. There's communication skills. It improves listening and speaking abilities through in-game dialogue. But that is certainly not all. There's also a problem solving and critical thinking element to D&D. And if you enjoy this, then D&D may be a great hobby for you to consider getting into. For example, strategic planning is a big part of the game, developing tactics to overcome obstacles and enemies. Decision making, learn to make choices that can have a significant consequence in the game world. There's also adaptability. If you like to do activities that are adaptable, D&D is great for this. Learn to adjust strategies based on evolving situations. And let's not forget the entertainment aspect of it, right? It is fun and enjoyable. It provides hours of immersive entertainment. It offers escapism. It offers a break from daily routine by diving into a fantasy realm. And there is the role play aspect of it. Endless possibilities ensure that no two games are exactly the same. And this is definitely entertaining. And let's not skip over the personal growth aspect of D&D. And for me, this is actually a really important one. It is confidence building. It helps shy individuals become more outgoing. It helps you to develop leadership skills. Dungeon masters enhance organization and leadership abilities by practicing running a game for many people, and there are actually learning opportunities. It teaches, in some cases, about mythology. There's a lot of math. There are ethics and philosophy to explore and discuss within the realm of D&D. And let's not forget storytelling. Whether you're the GM or the player, there's going to be a lot of storytelling. And so, for example, if you like to write stories, this is such an amazing hobby to get into. By the way, do you struggle to come up with plot arcs on the fly? If so, I have the perfect tool for you. It is called My Ultimate Plot Randomizer. It is a free ebook. When you join my email list, you can download this for free. You'll get the link in your first email. It contains 4 D100 tables that will let you roll random plot arcs whenever you need them. Roll the hook, the conflict, and the conclusion, and even add wild and wacky stuff all right there. Download this, print it out, add it to your tool collection, and you will never go without another plot arc again. I give this away for free to help you create awesome plot arcs just like I do. I use this in almost every single session, and you are not going to want to miss out on this, so make sure you grab this. With that being said, it is not all pros. There are, in some cases, some downsides, and there might be some roadblocks that would very reasonably maybe cause you to think, I don't know that D&D is the right thing for me right now. So let's go through them. First of all, it is a pretty serious time commitment. It takes a lot of preparation time. The sessions are often long, lasting hours, which can be difficult to fit into busy schedules. And it kind of requires regular meetings. You have to find a way to meet up relatively consistently, and coordinating this with multiple people can be a big challenge. So if you have a hard time with having free time, D&D may not be the best option as far as hobbies go. There's also a learning curve to it. The rules are relatively complex. They can be overwhelming to new players and GMs. Some people are also not comfortable with the role play aspect of D&D. They might feel uneasy acting out their characters, etc. And there are also rules disputes. There's the potential for disagreements over interpretations of the rules, and some players who really like black and white game rules might find this a bit frustrating. There is also a resource investment to consider. The cost of materials alone is actually a little bit high when you factor it all in at once. There is the purchasing of rule books, dice. If you go the route of buying miniatures, that can actually be quite expensive. The core rule book alone, the player's handbook, is about a $50 investment. Then you have the Dungeon Master's Guide, which is not necessarily needed, but it's kind of important. And then the Monster Manual, which once again is not necessarily like you don't have to have it to play, but it really adds to the game. So you're looking at right there, somewhere between $120 to $150 investment, depending on where you buy your books. And then you have dice, which actually are pretty cheap. You can order dice relatively cheaply, and printing out character sheets, getting some pencils, and maybe a dry erase board to draw your map on. This is probably one of the cheaper ways to do it, and yet it is still a bit of a cost. With that being said, when you factor it out over long spans of time, you will find that this is actually a very affordable hobby. Once you buy the books, you don't need to buy them again, and you can even keep playing the same system for years and years and years. Even if D&D ends up changing and releasing a new edition, you can still play with the books you purchased and continue to run games in that system. For example, I still have my entire collection of 3rd edition books, and even though I run 5e now because I think it's fun, I still have them, and occasionally I delve back into 3rd edition with my friends and we play some good old 3e. So when you factor it all up front, it's a little bit expensive, but when you factor it out over the long run, it's actually quite a cost-effective hobby, as long as you kind of do it in a cost-effective manner. With that being said, some people also see the group dynamics being a downside. There can be conflicts between players. This could range from personality conflicts to in-game conflicts. There can be attendance issues. Finding a group of people who are willing to meet consistently can be surprisingly difficult. There can also be a game balancing issue. Sometimes when you have a larger group, some players will tend to get more game time than others. And once again, people who enjoy really consistent types of games may find this a little bit frustrating. And the open-endedness of D&D, while awesome, can sometimes lead to frustrations in this area. There's also an emotional investment aspect to consider that some people are just not interested in. For example, people sometimes get attached to their characters, and when those characters die, it can be very upsetting and might even ruin the game for some people. And if you tend to be this type of person who hates to see bad things happen to your character you spent hours on, then D&D may not actually be the game for you, or at least not playing with groups who would kill your beloved character. There's also a frustration potential in the aspect of like puzzles and tough battles, and sometimes not knowing like exactly what to do. Some people don't like this aspect of the game, and sometimes there are conflicts, like personal conflicts happen during the game. People can actually get into disagreements. Sometimes they take the rules of the game or even the things going on in the game very personally, and this can lead to some relatively weird and uncomfortable situations. Of course, this kind of is dependent on your group, but if you play D&D long enough, you're bound to run into one or two of these situations, and they're not very fun, and that's one of the downsides of playing TTRPGs with other humans. Hey, are you tired of using the same old methods to roll up the same old loot over and over again in your games? Well, I have a new, unique, awesome way to generate awesome new loot that your players will never see coming. It's called the Ultimate Dungeon Loot Randomizer. This book comes in an awesome hardcover version or in a very affordable ebook option. It contains mundane dungeon items, mundane weapons and armor. It contains slightly magical dungeon items, magical weapons and armor, cursed items, potions and elixirs, magic scrolls, otherworldly wonders and relics, and even entire chests of loot. It contains 10 massive D100 tables full of awesome dungeon loot that you can roll, flavor however you want, set it at whatever power level you want, and best of all, it is system agnostic, so you can use it with any fantasy TTRPG. If you want to really level up your dungeon loot, grab this, link is in the description, order your copy today. All right, now that we've covered the pros and cons, let's go over the actual decision-making process. Let's talk about some ways to know how to know when you are ready to start a D&D game. This is like a checklist. If you check yes to the majority of these questions, then you are going to be probably good to go to delve into TTRPGs. If you cannot say yes to most of these things, then you may not be ready for it. It may not be the right hobby for you at this point in time. Maybe not a no, but maybe a not yet kind of thing. Number 1, do you enjoy fantasy settings, stories, and role play? If you answer yes to this, D&D may be a great hobby for you. Are you excited about diving into the rules and mechanics of a TTRPG like D&D? Does the idea of diving into the rules and learning them sound fun to you? If so, D&D may be a perfect option for you. Have you read the Player's Handbook or any D&D starter guides? If you answer yes to this and you liked what you read, well, you know what? May as well jump into it and give it a try. Do you have ideas for characters you'd like to play or stories you'd like to explore? If you answer yes to this, then being a player or a game master in a game of D&D may be perfect for you. Do you have friends or acquaintances interested in playing D&D with you or that are already playing and would invite you to their game? Sometimes having a great group to help introduce you to the hobby is the best way to gain entrance to it and make it awesome. Are you willing to work with others and share the spotlight during the game? If you enjoy this kind of collaborative storytelling and gameplay, then boom, D&D is perfect. Can you commit to regular game sessions, i.e. like weekly or bi-weekly games, and can you put them on your calendar and be pretty assured that once you commit to them, you'll be able to show up? If you answer yes to this, then your time commitment availability is probably good to go and you have nothing to worry about. Do you want to create or participate in immersive stories? To me, this seems obvious. Who wouldn't want to do that? But I know for some people, they don't care about this. They would rather just kind of play a more mechanical game. But if you like the idea of creating immersive stories and taking part in them, then boom, D&D is wonderful. Do you enjoy puzzles, strategy, and coming up with creative solutions? Gotcha. Ever heard of a game called D&D? Are you comfortable acting in character and exploring different personas? Now, keep in mind, you do not have to go wild with this one. Just a little bit. Like, instead of me talking my normal voice, I may talk like a gruff barbarian. Just little changes. Do you like doing those types of things? A little bit of acting? If so, then D&D would be so much fun, I promise. Are you okay with setbacks in the game and can handle character challenges or failures? Are you going to be able to survive the heartbreak of your cleric going down in a fight against the big bad evil villain? Do you have or are you willing to obtain the necessary rule books and dice? Maybe you have friends who might loan you the books so you can get started. Eventually, it will be so handy to purchase them yourself. And this is, like I said, at least a $50 to $60 commitment to get yourself a book and some dice, cheap dice to get started with. And that will actually be plenty enough to get you started with. Over time, you may find that the temptation to spend more is there. But if you're willing to make this minimal monetary investment to try it out, then hey, that's a great sign that you might be going in a good direction. Do you have a suitable place to host the game, or are you comfortable playing online? These are really the two best options, unless you know someone who's hosting a game. But if you're willing to do one of these two things, then boom, awesome. Are you open to learning as you go and adapting to new situations in the game? D&D is one of those hobbies that you're not going to get perfect at overnight. Just like learning to play racquetball, it's going to take a little bit of practice. Just like learning tennis for the first time, you're going to have some times when you're going to maybe be a little frustrated, be like, this is actually really complicated. I don't know if I'm right cut out for this. But the truth is, if you can see yourself having fun and adapting through those challenges, then boom, perfect. And finally, do you understand that not everything will go perfectly? And are you okay with improvisation? This is true whether you're a player or whether you're a GM. And this is so true. Things are not going to go perfectly. D&D kind of requires us to have a bit of a serious merged with a chill attitude. We have to try our best, do our best, prepare our best. And then also Roll with the setbacks, roll with the imperfections, be chill with the things that don't go as planned, like players not showing up, players deviating from the plan, running into situations where the gameplay might be frustrating for one reason or another, being a little disappointed sometimes when you're looking forward to an epic session and the session turns out to be just a little bit bleh for one reason or another. These things do happen. But if you can find it in your heart to survive these things and then to ride the waves into the high points of how amazing and awesome D&D can be, then you are probably a fantastic candidate for the hobby. And we would love to have you. All right, with that being said, how will you know for sure if D&D is not for you? How can you rest assured understanding that, you know what, the time to play D&D is not at this point in time, or maybe never, it is not the hobby for me? How can you know this? How can you understand this for sure if you're kind of on the fence and you're thinking it might not be for me, but I want a little extra clarification. I want to make sure that when I choose not to play D&D, I'm making the right choice. Well, I've got some statements here. And if you agree with the majority of these statements, guess what? It's probably true that either D&D is not the game for you or it's not the right time for you to start with it. So I'm going to read through these for you. Here are the statements. If you agree with most of these, then it may be time to try something different than D&D. If you are disinterested in fantasy settings and storytelling, then D&D may not be the right hobby for you. If you feel uncomfortable acting out characters or participating in imaginative role play, then D&D may not be the right hobby for you. If you cannot commit to regular sessions or lengthy gameplay due to a busy schedule, it may not be the right game for you. If you don't have time to prepare adequately, especially if you're going to be a dungeon master, then D&D may not be the right hobby for you. If you feel overwhelmed by extensive rules and complex game mechanics, then it may not be the right hobby for you. If you prefer activities with a shorter learning curve, and get frustrated with learning intricate systems, then D&D may not be right for you. Here are some other statements that may tell you that D&D is not the right game for you. If you prefer games with clear winners and losers rather than cooperative storytelling. If working closely with others towards a shared narrative does not appeal to you. If you're uncomfortable in group settings or with group decision making. If the potential for disagreements or in-game conflicts is unsettling to you. If the cost of books, dice, and other materials is prohibitive due to financial constraints. If you have difficulty finding others interested in playing or joining an existing group. If you might become overly upset by in-game setbacks or character losses. If you struggle with distinguishing in-game actions from personal feelings. If you favor activities with clear structures over open-ended storytelling, or if creating and evolving a character doesn't excite you, then D&D may not be the right hobby for you. Another thing to note is that there are also other systems out there that might be a bit more in line with what you're looking for in a TTRPG. Just because D&D is a super popular option and definitely one of the more mainstream options, if not the most mainstream option, that doesn't mean it's your only option. Some options you may want to look at include titles like Pathfinder, 13th Age, Dungeon World, Blades in the Dark, Savage Worlds, Call of Cthulhu, Monster of the Week, and others. There are also other TTRPGs that are not strictly restricted to a fantasy setting. There are literally hundreds of other systems out there that might fill that role better than D&D for you in your situation. I just so happen to love D&D and consider it the best game in the world, hence why I'm talking about it in this video and talking very specifically about whether or not D&D is right for you as a player or a game master. With that being said, that is all I have to say on this one. Thank you so much for coming back to another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm here every day talking about the best game in the world, D&D. So I will see you awesome people on the next one.